We have him with us this morning. Just like to thank you, Eric, for joining us here, and I'm going to give it to Jim Jenkins to tell how we got in touch with you. Jim?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jim Jenkins, and I'm a member of the West Triad and retired police officer, actually myself, from years ago. But we wanted to get an expert in to talk about traffic laws and about some of the crazy things out there now, such as roundabouts, which we're all trying to learn how to negotiate, and there are more and more of those every time. So we contacted the Madison PD and asked for an expert, and they assigned Eric Lee to help us. And Eric has been with the PD here in town for, since 2001. And he's worked general patrol out of the Central District. And most recently, he's trained and become a traffic investigator, an accident investigator, which is a highly technical field and requires lots of training and experience. And Eric currently rides a motorcycle as a patrolman. And it brings to mind a story of mine when I was a little kid. My dad was a cop in Racine. And one of the first things I can remember is he got me a ride in a police motorcycle sidecar. And it was one of the most exciting things I'd ever done in my first 3 or 4 years, and probably since then too. So I'd like to welcome Eric Lee to join us.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tolerating me. We have a mask thing, in the office, so I hope that doesn't take away from the presentation for you today. So I looked up statistics. I'll bore you with some of these for a little bit. So these are from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And in 2018, which is the most recent statistic they had, 6,907 people, 65 or more, died in fatal crashes, and that constitutes 19% of the national total. So seniors are certainly involved in a lot of crashes. Also, from that statistic year in 2018, there was 50.9 million people that were age 65 or more in the United States. And I think that's a lot of people, but yet 6,900 of them are involved in fatal crashes. And let's try to reduce that or eliminate the number. But being real, I think it's more reduction. So these are the bullet points I want to talk about today. And certainly we can expand and go from there. I know this is kind of weird. I'm seeing like the green square around a picture for who's talking. So there's not like a hand raising thing, but maybe if you do put a hand up, I'll see it and then I can just stop talking. So the bullet points I was going to talk about today was setting up your vehicle. Where am I going? Talking about navigation. Lane changes. Metered ramps. So those ramps that have the traffic lights on them before you can go proceed. The big one, roundabouts. Hear me out on this one. I want to talk about drunk driving, but for different reasons than you think. This section I have titled, call it hanging it up. Maybe it's time to stop driving or not. I don't know. That's an assessment you have to make, but that's one of my topic points. And then I'll end with something about renewals for your driver's license. So that's my bullet points that I have that I'm going to start. Setting up your vehicle. I know this may sound very elementary, but I think getting back to the basics sometimes is the most important. I see this when I teach people how to shoot guns. And sometimes they lose track of that basic how to hold things. And when I teach them that, all of a sudden, wow, now they're bullseye shooters again. Let's talk about your seat position. Excuse me. When you get in your vehicle, are you looking under the steering wheel, over the steering wheel? Are you able to adjust the seat to a position that affords you good visibility? And then your question would be, what is good visibility? I'd like to be able to see underneath the car ahead of me when I'm stopped, and I'd like to see through their windshield when I'm driving. I'm not saying I'm literally looking through their windshield, but I want to have a high visual horizon when I'm driving. Is your back relatively straight? And then when you're driving, do you have a slight bend in your arms? So if we drive straight, I'm trying to just do a straight arm versus a slight bend in our arm. Then when I have a good hand position of 9 and 3, and let's everyone, if you're willing to do this, go ahead and do this now as long as you're physically able. Have a slight bend in your arms and then turn the steering wheel full 180 degrees, turn it back to neutral, and turn it again to the other direction. And when you have that slight bend in your arms and positions at 9 and 3, that gives you the best ability to maneuver that steering wheel. So I don't have you do it wrong and then I'll have you do it right again. A lot of people go for a 10 o'clock and a 2 o'clock hand position, so up a little bit more, right? Now go ahead with your slight bend of your arms, turn that wheel, and now your hands start touching more soon. And it doesn't give you as much movement of the steering wheel. So we'll do it right again because I want to end on the positive note. A 9 and a 3 hand position, a slight bend in your arms. Let's turn that steering wheel fully to the left. Back to neutral, turn that steering wheel fully to the right, and back to neutral. And this is something you could practice. You start your car up, especially with power steering. Go ahead and start your car up and then practice that with your actual steering wheel so you can feel the feedback. You can feel the friction on the road with that. And as long as you're in park, it's not going to go anywhere and shouldn't hurt anybody, as long as it's all mechanically sound. So some other things to think about. When you approach the vehicle, just kind of give it a decent little walk around. All 4 tires have air in them. Any new scratches, scrapes, dents, or bruises that you didn't know the vehicle had. And then when you sit in your vehicle, all 3 mirrors, left side mirror, rear view mirror, right side mirror, are those all seeing things that you need to see? I'm not going to tell you how to set up those mirrors, but those mirrors should afford you the best view all the way to the rear of the vehicle. And maybe those 2 side mirrors on the doors, that there's a slight overlap of what they're seeing. So this mirror here sees maybe my fingernails, as does this mirror. So there's a slight overlap, so I can say, oh yeah, that's the same point. Everyone has a different way of making reference with mirrors. Seatbelts, certainly wear them, and it goes over the shoulder. So I see a lot of people putting their seatbelt underneath their arm. That's technically not wearing the seatbelt. The seatbelt does have to go over that left shoulder if you're a driver, or your right shoulder if you're a passenger. But I'm going to talk about driving. That seatbelt needs to go here. That's how it was designed. If it's worn underneath the arm, that technically could be a seatbelt violations ticket. So make sure it goes over your left shoulder. And many vehicles where the seatbelt attaches to the frame, to the side, that seatbelt is adjustable for height. So maybe if it's up way too high, maybe it's starting to cut into your face or your neck, you're able to reduce that height so that it comes more over your shoulder and it puts it in a more comfortable place on your body, on your person. I'd like to tell you how to do that, but every car is slightly different. It tends to be just pushing a button and then sliding it up and down. Make sure your windows are clear and clean so you can see out them, especially come winter. Some people get a little bit lazy about window scraping. And then maybe after you start up your car, but before you go moving, that's when you adjust your air conditioning or your heating, depending on the season that you have. Maybe that's when you adjust your lights. Maybe that's when you turn on your wipers for the rain level that there is. So all of these things are happening before you're moving for the day. And then lastly, I'd say set yourself up. Are you well rested? Are you well hydrated? Are you in a very negative mood? Because mood can certainly affect people's driving. They can drive more assertively, more aggressively. Bad things can happen. Are there undue stresses? Are you thinking about a friend that something's going on? Are you thinking about something about yourself that's going on? So are you mentally there and in the game for the driving that day? I feel like I babbled a lot right there. So that's all the bullet points I had for setting up your vehicle and setting up yourself. Do I have any questions about that or any clarifications?
I recall someone telling me once that, and this was I think a state patrol officer saying that next to drunk drivers, the most dangerous drivers that he's ever encountered are angry drivers. You know, and that plays back to what you're saying about, you know, check yourself too, and the mood, and, you know, are you distracted? Are you ticked off about something?
Absolutely. I mean, we see it a lot, and sometimes people you stop for going crazy speeds. Why, what, you know, I stopped you. Yeah, I just got really angry about something. I just decided to gas the car. Now I'm stopping you. It doesn't always have to be tire squealing. It's just that they were revving an engine and now they're going 70 miles an hour on East Washington Avenue. All right. Any other questions about setting up yourself or your vehicle?
Yeah, hang on, Eric. Here's a question from Isabel Hubbard, who's with me here in the office. Go ahead,
Okay.
Isabel.
Officer Lee, I have a question. When students in high school take their driver's ed education, whether it be through the school or privately, the first bullet points that you mentioned about the mirrors, the seat belts, are those really emphatically stressed to student drivers? I mean, whose job is that? I mean, the parents aren't a lot along when those kids are getting the driver's training. They're maybe at home, but the person who's giving the instruction, do they really stress that about the mirrors, the seat belts? I mean, I've never seen anybody ever try to put a seat belt under their arm, but I'm glad, under their armpit, I'm glad you showed that and talked about that. And it could get, you said, a citation if they're picked up and it's like that. I never knew that.
So to answer your first question, is this taught in driver's ed?
Yeah.
So I have a 16 and a 19-year-old. So I think I'm fairly new and I'm fairly recent to the driver's ed program. And I know that they talk about mirrors. I certainly know they talk about seatbelts. And they talk about giving your vehicle a walk around before you drive. I don't get these bullet points from that. I get these bullet points from, checking out your squad at the beginning of a shift. So I teach, or I used to teach, recruits how to drive squad cars. And in that, I'm getting a lot of this information from that, but I think a lot of what is done for police driving can also be done in regular, normal citizen everyday driving.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Don't be bashful. I don't charge you per question. All right. So the next bullet point I have is, where am I going? If you know where you're going, then that's good. Life is good. And la-di-da-di-da, you drive off and you go on. Where I find conflicts in any driver of any age group is when they're lost. I've been there. And so when one gets lost and all of a sudden they're like, hey, I needed to turn there, what I ask of you is to keep moving forward, go to the next intersection or opportunity to turn around legally, and then make the assertion as, hey, I need to go here, from here to there. What happens when people stop in the middle of the roadway in a lane of traffic that's supposed to be moving, that's when the crashes happen. And I know there's that moment of panic, like, oh my gosh, I needed to turn there. Don't worry, it's not a COVID cough, but you can't catch it. So I would ask of you, please, to keep moving forward. If you missed a turn into a parking lot somewhere safe, and then determine how it is you want to get to where you're going. The other opportunity, if it works for you, is can you have a co-navigator? Can someone help you go, especially somewhere you don't know where you're going? Can you bring a friend other than a cell phone for the GPS on the cell phone? So I would offer you co-pilots, because you have them in airplanes, or keep moving till you get to a point where you can turn around. That's really all I have in regards to where am I going. questions, comments, concerns, or clarifications on that idea?
When you're talking about GPS, do you find any brands are more dependable than others? I mean, I've used some where I make more wrong turns following the GPS than if I just mapped it myself.
There's a lot to be said for just mapping it yourself.
Remember, man.
Like when I go on a trip on my motorbike, you know, I have a GPS on one of my bikes, but I tend to just, what I like to do is pre-plan the route, especially because I tend to take back roads on a motorcycle. And I have very succinct and simple words, like westbound Highway 33 with an arrow to Highway G northbound. And then the next turn is Highway G northbound to Highway 13, you know, east. And that's how I do it, but everyone has got their system. So to answer your question, Mike, GPS and which one do I find better? I've always been a Garmin fan, but then I found that my phone tends to be the best GPS. It's the most up-to-date all the time. Like I recently went to Minneapolis. Yes, I did that on purpose. And I set up the GPS on my truck and I set up the GPS on my phone, and the GPS on my truck did not know the address and would not register. And the GPS on my phone did register.
Yeah,
So
the GPS in the car in the background there is pretty worthless, I think. I really haven't ever been able to figure it out. I just use the one on my phone and it works beautifully. So, and it plays, you know, I've got the phone linked to the, you know, the sound system and everything, so that it's very clear and pretty precise. I had a Garmin GPS once lead me into Lake Erie, so I gave up on that.
And I think you hit I think that was the golden ticket right there, Jim, is if you have that technological ability to link your phone with the Bluetooth system in your vehicle, so that way when your GPS is telling you turn left, it'll even reduce the sound on your radio if you're listening to music. Like I'm a music listener. It'll reduce the sound on the music, say, hey, your approach is in 0.2 miles. Hey, okay, better heads up, where's my next exit? Especially if you're on an interstate system, because I might have to exit to the left, or do I have to exit to the right? What else y'all have on? Where am I going?
Hi, I'm Kathleen.
Nothing so far? Yes, question, Kathleen?
Not a question, a comment, because it's already been made by Mike, is I find now that I've gotten older, I really need to think ahead of time where I'm going, because I used to be more automatic and things would just kind of come to me. They do not do that so much anymore. So, you know, kind of pre-planning where I'm going ahead of time, even though I have the GPS, it gives me a better orientation to where I'm going, I guess. So
I guess I would, if I were to make an analogy, if I'm going to go to a job interview, I'm not going to go to the job interview without pre-planning. I'm going to think about what my skill sets are. What does the company like? What can I bring to the company? What are my strengths? And similarly, before I go somewhere, I can think about, all right, so I'm going to go from the east side of Madison to the west side, and I need to stop at the store downtown. I need to stop at the store on the near west side. I need to stop at the store in Middleton. And then I'm going to go visit my friend in Cross Plains and then go home to the east side of Madison. And maybe even just thinking about it in bullet points, just so it's like at least up there, pre-planned of sorts.
Yeah, I found that that's helpful to go to the mapping program on your computer, which, you know, in my case with that whole Apple thing, it's also on my phone. and look at it the night before, you know, and try to get accustomed to it. Look at it on the map and look at the directions. It really helps.
Good. This is good stuff. Anyone else have any 2 cents or nickel or a dime worth of information for me? I know, budget crisis. We can't spare more than 2 cents. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about was lane changes. and this may seem elementary, and I don't mean to insult anyone. My father turns 87 next month, and I get a lot of this from watching him drive. And I love him to pieces, but Dad, use a turn signal. So I would ask you as a motorist, put your turn signal on first. You're asking the motorist, the other vehicles there, I'd like to move into that lane. It's asking for permission. And then hopefully the motorist give you that permission by giving you distance and time. So put your signal on in the direction you're going to make your lane change. I'm signaling to the left here as I'm sitting in my office. And then you're going to check your mirror. Is there anything coming up fast and behind me that's going to maybe interfere with my ability to move to that lane? Once my mirrors say I'm clear, I'm going to do a head check. I want you to actually turn your heads and look to the left. Why don't you go ahead and do that for me now? Look over your left shoulder and look for something on the wall behind you. All right, you can straighten it out. So when you make your head check, folks, you're just checking to see, is there thousands of pounds of steel in my way, or is it open tarmac? And then when it is clear, then you're going to take that lane, you're going to steer over, cancel your signal, and then you're ready to go again. And then just for the sake of being thorough, we're going to do a lane change to the right. So your signal is going to go on to the right. You're going to check your mirrors for the right. Now I want you to turn and look behind you to the right side to look for anything in your blind spot. It's conveniently clear. Off to the right lane we go. Make sure you cancel your turn signal. And here you are, driving away safely and happily.
One thing that'd be useful, I think, because I notice my neck is stiff. If you drive a lot, it would be good to make sure that your neck muscles stay limber.
Yeah.
There's some neck exercises I suppose you could ask the doctor about. And not being able to turn your neck, I would think, would be one of the major reasons for collisions.
It can be. Truckers have their fisheye 180-degree mirrors, and I've driven some bigger trucks, and those are very helpful. But that perspective of having that fisheye view, it kind of messes with me. I like to have that more linear aspect of the car is right there, not objects in mirror closer than they appear. But that's a me preference. Some people can do it very well. Or having a co-pilot, like we mentioned before.
Yeah, even though I have a blind spot thing on my vehicle, I find that I still am looking back to make sure. I just can't 100% rely on that.
No, and I thank you for not relying on that. It's a neat tool. And I think some cars actually even have cameras there. So when you put your signal on, that camera is showing what is or is not at that location. But not every vehicle has that.
Now, mine just starts, the little light starts flashing if somebody's there, if I put my signal on to turn that way, which is fine. But the camera, I hadn't heard of the camera thing. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, sure, it's pricey, but that rear view mirror probably cost $3,000 on a crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think now my daughter just bought a new Honda Civic. No, Honda little SUV anyway, but I think it came standard, and it was not a crazy expensive car by any means.
And she got the mirror or the cameras?
The camera, yeah, and I think her previous Civic had it also.
Now that you say that, I think what I noticed it on the first time was a Honda Cross Tour.
Yeah.
Brand, but
yeah, this is I forget the car, the exact car, but it was a Honda, and I think they're trying to make it standard now. It's a great feature. I love driving her car with that.
So many of these safety features have become standard, which is great. Yeah. I'm sure from a manufacturing standpoint, it doesn't cost them a whole lot more to throw that in, but in days past, they would be able to charge more for each of those different features. And then they started packaging them to where you got a whole bunch of certain
Yeah.
things for the package. You know, Jim, you remember the day when you ordered a new car and you could actually specify things as detailed as
Oh yeah.
as low fuel indicator.
Yeah, I can remember when you could get a 409 cubic inch engine in a basic taxi cab style Chevy. So
Those were the days.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, enough
I did.
reminiscing. Huh?
Yeah.
We better move on. We're not going to
Younger pups like Mike there don't know what we're talking about. So.
All right. So the next topic area I was going to talk about was metered ramps. And what we have for that in the Madison area is the Beltline. That's the only one I know of in the Madison area. Maybe Verona Road here pretty soon. So metered ramp, what the idea is that it has a traffic light to control the flow of traffic onto the highway. It's typically during rush hour times so that there's not a line of 20 cars that look like a solid train trying to merge onto that highway system at one time. So the light goes green, then one vehicle proceeds onto that highway system, and it's easier for one car to get merged into the flow of traffic than the line of 20. So with the metered ramps, when at that intersection, there might be a yellow advisory light flashing, hey, the metered ramp is being metered now. So when you approach that area, there's probably going to be 2, maybe 3 lanes. 2 of those lanes would be for single occupant vehicles. And then another lane, typically designated with a white diamond paint on the pavement, is for what they call the high occupancy vehicles, or sometimes people call it the HOV lane, or motorcycles. So people that, if there's 2 or more occupants in the vehicle, some highway systems say it has to be 4 occupants or more in a vehicle. If you're in that lane, the line tends to be shorter and allows you to proceed typically more quickly because that line is shorter. They tend to have traffic lights that are low, kind of more at eye level, and they tend to also have a traffic light that's high. You're probably going to observe the one that's more low, like most people, I think. And when it goes green, your lane is good to go. Now, I want to preface it by it's your lane. There might be 3 lanes there, and each lane has its own green light designation, again, for that metered ramp so that they stagger the vehicles going onto the highway. So really, it's just a traffic light, but why is there a traffic light on a highway system? That is why. Any questions about the high occupancy lanes or the metered ramps?
So once you jump onto that, you get the green light and you romp on it and you're up at about 100 miles an hour by the time you hit the mainstream. Is that how you're supposed to do it, or what? I mean, sometimes you see people poking along and others are like rockets.
So the idea, in all seriousness, is to get up to highway speed quickly and briskly. You're not supposed to go 100, because at 100, I would say, if your flaps are on, pull back on the yoke and then start to rotate for liftoff. But the idea is to briskly get up to highway speeds, look for a gap in traffic, put your signal on, saying, hey, again, please give me permission to come into this lane and merge. Any other questions about metered ramps? All right, the next one is the big one, roundabouts. If I were to give roundabouts the quick bullet point, I would say it's yield traffic coming from the left. I know for years and years, decades and decades, we've talked about the person on the right has the right of way, which is true except for roundabouts. We're in a roundabout. Now I need to look for traffic in the left. They have the right of way because they are actually in the roundabout. People in the roundabout have the right of way versus other traffic. That would be the way I would just very briefly discuss a roundabout. Also, the other right of way would be pedestrians. We're trying to preach that to the Madison area residents in regards to just crosswalks in general. As long as people in a crosswalk and they're not just boldly walking in front of traffic, they need to at least look for a reasonable gap, and then they can proceed. So the idea with the roundabout is that here's the roundabout, my fist, and the crosswalk is going to be well before the roundabout. So we're going to yield to pedestrians if they're there. And then that gives us an opportunity to look to the left, go to the roundabout, and if it's clear, I can proceed. And you go in a counterclockwise direction. And then if you're going to turn right or you're going to proceed straight, thinking about it like a four-way intersection for a roundabout, because sometimes there's 5 opportunities or 6. And if you're going to turn right or proceed straight, and it's a multi-lane roundabout, like if there's 2 lanes that go in a circle, stick to the right lane on the approach. If you're going to turn what would be considered left at that roundabout, be in that left lane, and you're going to go past the first exit, past the second exit, and then you'll proceed out of the roundabout at that 3rd point. Or if you want to pull a U-turn, like, hey, I really needed to turn back there, kind of like we discussed a few minutes ago, then you can just do a U-turn in that roundabout, and that's perfectly legal as well. Have I lost anyone so far?
No, you got us.
And some of them, they're actually 2 lanes that are going around the roundabout, you know? So when do you go on the inside lane and when do you go to the outside lane?
The outside lane would be for right turns and going straight. The inside lane would be for making a left turn or for pulling a U-turn at that intersection.
Okay.
When you say left turn, I guess I'm a little confused as to, let's say you're wanting to take the second exit from that roundabout, not the first one, which would be the right turn, but the next one. Now, if there's 2 lanes going around, which lane should you be in?
So if you wanted to proceed straight, Harold, you would make the approach from the right lane of the roundabout.
If I wanted to take okay, if I wanted to continue straight, okay.
Yep. And then the left turn, if you eliminated the roundabout and what you would make would be a left turn, then you would be set up on the inside lane of that 2-lane roundabout.
Okay, so right turn or going straight, you want to stay in that right lane.
Correct.
Unless it's a right turn only lane. I've seen a few of those, right?
Yep. So you do have to watch for the signage, but as a general rule, what we just discussed about being to the right for making a right turn or straight, and the inside lane for making a left turn or a U-turn.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Eric, when you say U-turn, you mean go straight around, right? And
correct.
Okay.
So you would literally be doing 180 degrees. Like, hey, I did not want to go east on this street. I need to go west.
Okay.
You go around that roundabout and you just go back from the direction you.
Gotcha. Right. Okay.
It's okay. Yeah. This would be much easier if I had a whiteboard to draw things for you. So you're tolerating me very well because I'm also a very hands person when I talk. The other thing I would add with roundabouts is if there's a heavy truck or a large vehicle, the state of Wisconsin defines that as 40 feet or longer. They have the right of way in there.
Oh.
So big trucks, there's an apron, especially on those 2-lane roundabouts, the larger ones. There tends to be an apron with a gradual curb that is designed so that the semi-trailer might go up on there. So they're not being a reckless driver. That is designed for the semi-trailer to go there because of how they make a turn.
Okay, I got a question. The general rule is you always yield to the traffic in the roundabout.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen, and I asked this question because I saw one, to where the vehicles in the roundabout actually have to yield to the side coming traffic.
I have not seen that, and that's not the way that the general statute is written about roundabouts.
I think that there's in Sarasota, Florida, where we spend a little time, there's an old one. It's a huge roundabout, and it's probably 50 years old. And actually, if you're in the roundabout, you've got yield signs, so you're yielding. Actually, it's pretty clear. You've got a yield sign. You're actually yielding to traffic coming in from the adjacent sides.
Where is this? Now I'm curious.
Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, I'm not going there.
On Weber Street. So, rule I tell my wife, always yield the traffic in the roundabout. Well, when we're down there, that's an exception.
Yeah. And I can only speak to Wisconsin laws.
Okay. I give you a first there.
You did. Any other questions or clarifications in regards to roundabouts? I'm trying to make it simple, short, and sweet, but I also want to make sure you feel clear and confident about it. All right.
I guess one comment I would make is if you want to go past that first exit, unless there's a signage on the street that says right turn only, you really want to be in that right lane, unless you want to go straight or a U-turn.
If you want to go straight or make a right, again, I'm trying to think about this, eliminate the roundabout component just for simplification. If you're going to make a generally right turn or proceed straight on that roadway, you would make the approach from the right lane if it's a 2-lane roundabout. And if you're
unless it's clearly marked right turn only. Obviously, if it's marked right turn only, that's what it means. But I've seen a few of those.
Yeah, but there may even be some 3-lane ones in the Milwaukee area, but I don't know. I can speak to the Madison general area, my experiences, and what I looked up on Wisconsin DOT website and statutes in regards to roundabouts. And just the generic writing is that the right lane would be right and straight. The left lane would be for left and U-turn.
On the signage, sometimes, before you get to the roundabout, you see up ahead, it'll show you the hub, and then they'll have the roads branching off of that. Are those standardized, the markings standardized so that they always seem a little different at each one you approach?
I can't explain why they'd be different. I'd like to know what you're experiencing as different. And the reason I say that is, did the sign shop, did they have to make one of those arrows smaller because of the way they had to cut the tape that day?
Mm-hmm.
So then just think about it as a different font size. If you're writing a Word document, does it make the document look very different than the font you're typically used to?
Right.
But your question was, are road signs standardized? There is, I forget the acronym, and you wouldn't care if I knew it, but there is an organization or an entity that does regulate what the road signs are, what colors they're supposed to be, and those signs would have to be following some level of, it's like MUHTSA or something like that, MUHTI or TSA.
I'm still I'm thinking about roundabouts, and if the roundabout has 2 lanes, a middle and an outer lane, unless it was a really long roundabout, I don't know why you'd ever want to be in the middle lane, because unless you lose the right lane, even when you're going to the 3rd one, you're always turning right off of it. So you'd have to get over to the right if you were in the middle.
The idea behind that is if traffic is going to be making a right or going straight, that they have that access and that you're not taking away from them. So another way to think about it too, Margaret, is I wanted to make a left turn and I can't get over to that right lane. The idea of the roundabout is I might have to make another lap, find my gap, and then exit.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Some people on motorcycles just go round and round in them anyway. Anything else about roundabouts that comes to mind at this moment? And if it comes to your mind before we leave, that's fine as well. It's not like this is your drop dead moment of we can't answer those questions anymore. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about was impaired driving. I mean, I'm not thinking about it from the perspective of drinking and driving. I mean, certainly if you had a couple brandy old fashions with your fish fry, I get it, but have someone else drive you home. But I'm approaching the driving more from the aspect of medications. Now, are there medications that anyone is taking or any of your friends that are taking that would impair their judgment, impair their vision, impair their balance, and that would affect their ability to drive? You know, does the medication have a warning like you should not be operating machinery? And that machinery includes a vehicle. So I would ask for caution with you or your friends, your family that may have medications like that and are driving, especially if that's combined with a cocktail or two at a Friday fish fry or whatever else you might be doing. Not that we can do a lot right now with COVID, but you get the idea and you get the point. So I just really want to focus on, you have your medication, in and of itself could be an impairment, and then you combine that with alcohol, and now that impairment just kind of gets a double effect. So just be mindful of that. I don't know if there's any questions in regards to that, but I certainly wanted to touch base on it.
How are they detecting, detecting alcohol? You know, you take their breathalyzer. How do you detect, if you're in South Beloit, you know, and someone's made a trip to the local marijuana store, how would you detect someone traveling on the road with that?
So there are field sobriety tests that are specific to drugs. Mm-hmm. And then we would get a sample of their blood, and then that blood sample would come back with the results being negative or positive for controlled substances or prescribed medications. And sometimes people just admit it. Like, yep, I smoked 2 joints with my friend and I'm high as hell right now.
Oh boy.
But if they're on medication and this enters in and they're impaired because of the medication without any alcohol or any other illegal drugs, what do you do? Do you write them up?
If it involved a crash and there was a person that was under an influence of a drug, alcohol, or another controlled substance, prescribed or not, then yes, that would be certainly an operating while under the influence, stop, citation, and arrest situation. How that would sort out in court could be very different. You know, a judge may have some sympathy, like, hey, this is something that was prescribed. Maybe that driver would get a note from their doctor, and their doctor would say, you know what, that medication was supposed to be lowered. That was my fault. I don't know. I'm not the court. Thank God. But that's a good question, Harold. And I know that those arrests have been made. It's a prescribed drug. Person caused a crash. Someone was injured. They're seen as the at-fault driver, and there is a field sobriety testing and breath sample or blood taken from that driver.
Yeah, I can see where it would be, it could be a very significant factor. Like you say, if somebody was seriously injured or killed and it got into the court system, that could be very significant.
Absolutely.
And it's not just prescribed drugs either. I think that there are over-the-counter drugs that can alter, you know, your responses and things like that. I think certainly some of the cold pills that just knock you right out.
And some allergy.
Easily, yeah, allergy meds, yeah, that kind of thing.
So if I'm going down the road and I'm doing crazy things and I get pulled over and I am on allergy medication, probably may or may not want to admit to that.
I can't give you legal advice.
Yeah. Harold, there are some non-drowsy allergy medications you can take.
Yeah, I know. I've tried them all, Jim. I've tried them all.
Yeah, me too.
We have a question here from Isabel.
Yeah.
Officer, do drivers with perhaps medication needs ever show you something from their wallet besides their license that it was a prescribed medication? Or must they, or you give them like a warning citation? Or I'm talking if there wasn't any crash involved, but let's say somebody got stopped and you knew it wasn't alcohol, and I suppose you don't give a drug person a breathalyzer test. You would give that for alcohol suspicion, correct?
Correct.
So you wouldn't do it for any sort of medication. But what if they pulled out of their wallet some sort of a statement from their doctor? Is that something that's normally done that maybe I'm not aware of?
I don't know of a doctor. I mean, maybe there is, but if a doctor knows a medication is going to cause a possible driving impairment, they should not be prescribing the med, or they should not be allowing to drive. Because there's a form from Wisconsin DOT. I'm going to get geeky here now. It's form MV3141, where an officer, a citizen, or a doctor can write a report to DMV to have someone's driving revoked or suspended because of their, it's called a driver condition or behavior report.
Okay, that answers my question.
All right.
Can I raise we're talking about other things, but something just come to mind, and that's sleep deprivation.
Yep.
I've heard that can be as serious as being drunk.
It absolutely can be. If someone has been awake for approximately 24 hours, that can have the similar level of impairment or judgment as a 0.10 blood alcohol concentration.
Wow. Wow.
I've seen these big green markings on the street now, Eric. I'm wondering, what are those? The city's painting big green rectangles on the street. What are those?
I'll answer the question. Have you smelled it while they're painting that? Because that paint is horrible smelling when they're painting.
No idea.
So those are, well, there's two things of green. There's very predominantly painted green crosswalks. And a lot of those are in regards to bicycles. So it's trying to facilitate a bicycle highway, if you will. And I've seen those paintings along the bike paths that cross major roadways. I've seen a lot of them over by like Raymond Road area, Verona Road. And that predominant green, very bright green, and there's some texture to it. That's for a bicycle crosswalks.
Obviously wants to yield to those, but you know, if something's in the crosswalk, but does the bicycle actually have right of way in that? Can they just zoom across the road, you know, without looking?
A good question. And the short answer is no. The bicycle, well, the pedestrian or bicyclist, and the bicyclist has to be at a reasonable speed, so that's similar to a pedestrian. So you can ride your bicycle crosswalk, but it's supposed to be riding the bike at a walking pace, or dismount the bicycle and walk it across the roadway. The pedestrian and bicyclist is supposed to look for an open gap in traffic and then proceed, at which point, as long as it was reasonable, and they proceed through, then they have the right of way in the crosswalk.
So I see at that big crossing there on Midvale near Yuma. I mean, there's a big one near Yuma Drive, I believe, you know, across from Cherokee School. It's like across all 4 lanes of Midvale Boulevard. And sometimes the bikes just belt across there.
They're not supposed to.
Well, do they ever get tickets? I bet they don't get tickets.
I have not issued a ticket to a bicyclist.
Do they get tickets to bikers who are screwing up?
The ability to write them citations is there, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I ride a bike every day and on the trails in Madison mostly. And the green crossings are kind of confusing sometimes for motorists and bikers, I think. You never know. What'll happen is some people will honor it. And Midvale is a good example because you've got traffic moving fast there. One car in your nearest lane may honor it and stop, you know, to let you go by. The person on the far lane doesn't see that or doesn't want to stop, doesn't feel that they have to stop. So you've got this confusion and, you know, always wondering, am I going to get clipped by the next one that comes along? And I'd almost rather they didn't do anything and just I'd wait for a gap and go across. But now that it's gotten kind of confusing, I will say that people are much better about it than they used to be. Many places, most places toward the country, they're stopping for bike lanes now, but you just never know.
It's an education, and it's going to take a while to educate both the bicyclists and the motorists what to do.
The other thing is, because I just saw notice that we're running up toward 11. I see these solid red arrows, sometimes left, sometimes right. Can you take a right? Can you stop and turn right on a right red arrow?
If nobody's there.
If there's not a sign prohibiting the movement, I would say I would go.
Okay.
I have seen.
Even if it's a red arrow, a red arrow?
It's written where we can turn right on red unless there's a sign prohibiting the movement. And if there's not a sign prohibiting that movement, I look at that as it's advising you to come to a stop because you need to look for something. It's probably a high bicycle or high pedestrian intersection. And once you triple and quadruple check that, and the sign doesn't say you can't go.
I guess I've never seen a right arrow for a no turn. I've seen left many times where you'll be going down and either the left arrow, if it's blinking yellow, you can go if traffic permits. If it's blinking red, you cannot turn left, correct?
Yep.
Okay. I guess I've never seen an arrow regarding right turning.
I can't say I've seen them either. I mean, I'm just answering the question because it was
right there. The most common one, and where Commerce Drive connects into Mineral Point Road there by the West Side Menards.
Okay.
When you come out onto Mineral Point, you can only turn right there, and they have these red arrows. Okay. And initially I thought, well, that means red arrow means no turn, no right turn. But then I read the manual and it said you can, so it's a little confusing, if you haven't read the manual, I guess.
And that's probably why I haven't seen it, because for me, Seminole Highway is the Mason-Dixon line of Madison, east-west.
Okay.
And I'm an East Side kid, so.
Okay.
I can't picture that one on Mineral Point.
Eric, what was the dividing line?
For me, the dividing line is Seminole Highway.
Oh.
That's the end of the South Side Station, huh?
No, that's just the city in general. I'm an East Side kid, so.
Well, there's kind of a new flashing red arrow is relatively new, Whitney and Odana Road, where if you're coming Whitney towards Westgate Shopping Center and you want to turn right on Odana Road, there's a new flashing red. And I've been a little confused whether I can, after looking, sometimes I've gone but I've wondered if I should have,
A valid question, and I would go back to, and I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, if there's not a sign prohibiting the movement, but certainly because it's red, you want to make darn sure that it's good to go, because if you do cause a crash by striking a pedestrian or a bicyclist, that's not going to look favorable for you.
I guess I have to pay attention more. I haven't seen any red arrows on turning right. And Margie, you're saying if you're going down Mineral Point.
No, it's Whitney
Bay. Going down where?
It's like, if you're going down Whitney Way and the belt line is in back of you.
Okay.
And you want to turn right at Odana. And
okay.
Westgate Shopping Center is, you can see that in front of you. They have put, I think within the last year, a flashing red there.
Well, isn't there a separate?
There is a separate, and that's where it is.
Oh, so there's an arrow for that's either green or red, huh?
Right. Yeah.
And I guess to Eric, if that is flashing red, you're saying that. See, I'd feel a little uncomfortable if that red arrow is flashing red, just as I would if I were turning left and I've got an arrow that's red.
I bet if you look at the crosswalk light there, because that has a pedestrian crosswalk and a bicycle crosswalk,
right.
When your light is red, I bet the pedestrian light is green.
Oh, that could be.
Okay.
I have to look at that more closely when I go by there.
Well, me too again.
Because I go by there many times, so I'm going to pay attention.
Harold, you let me know after you look if I'm not thinking about this clearly, okay?
Well, if I can get any clarification on the matter, I will. Don't count on that.
Kind of along these lines, what we're talking about with these controlled right turn maneuvers. As of late, there seems to be a number of intersections in Madison that have a lit no turn on right sign. And that light comes on for no turn on right, or no right turn. I'm sorry, I misspoke. No right turn. And that no right turn light comes on, allowing access to the pedestrians and bicyclists to cross the crosswalk. If that no right turn sign is illuminated, you certainly cannot turn right. But then once that sign is off, the theory is it has allowed the opportunity for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross. If that no right turn light turns off, now you'd be able to turn right on red because there's no prohibition of that movement at that time. Or the traffic light tends to go green, in which case that becomes more obvious. A lot of this is to facilitate the movement of pedestrians and bicyclists, because I know Madison very much wants to be on that upper echelon of bicycle safety in the country.
The other thing that's a little bit new is, the Head Start lane for buses and bicycles. How does that work?
That's a very new one. So, this would be a better visual. The one I know of is at East High School.
Yeah.
And it's a far right lane, the bus lane. It's not a travel lane for motorists. It's specifically for buses or for parking. And there's a horizontal green line, and that's a stop for them. What'll happen is before your traffic light turns green, the bus will have a vertical line that's green, allowing the buses to proceed through that intersection ahead of the motorists. It probably stays there green for 5 seconds, allows the bus the head start to get into traffic because, as we well know, motorists aren't very good about, you know, playing nicely with other motorists to allow them in for a lane change or a merge. So that's what that light's about. I think they're going to implement more of them. I only know of the one at 4th Street and East Washington Avenue. And it really doesn't affect you as the motorist, but when you see that goofy looking light, what the heck is that about? It's about the ability for buses to proceed through the intersection before other motorists.
Right, and often when you see traffic move, when I see the vehicle next to me move, I want to move too.
Yeah.
You know, so when I see the bus going, I kind of want to romp on it.
So the last bullet point I had to discuss with you today was, I called it hanging it up. Is it time for you to consider to stop driving, or is it time for you to think about your friends to not drive anymore? And that's not an easy decision to make at all. I'm starting to contemplate it with my father, and how do I tell the guy that has raised me, hey, you can't do this anymore? I'm not there yet, but I know it's going to come soon. You know, so are you dinging and scratching your car and you don't know it? That might be a clue. Can you, if you have good self-awareness, do you know that you're having a lot of close calls? Like, you don't know if the light you just crossed was red or green? Are you having near collisions? Are you backing into fixed objects when you're parking your vehicle or maneuvering? So a lot of this can be self-assessment, and there's people that have been self-aware and saying, I have to hang it up because I've had too many close calls. Or do you have bold family and friends, medical staff saying, you know, hey, Eric, you're not using your turn signal lever to change lanes. You've almost hit 3 cars back there and you didn't even look twice about it. So these are the things I would ask of you, of yourself, or to think about with your friends that may be approaching that. And like I said, Wisconsin DOT has a form. Again, it's MV, like Mary Victor, 3141, and it's a driver condition or behavior report, and that can be filled out by law enforcement, medical staff, or a concerned friend. And that form can be filled out online, and I'm not sure if you could submit it electronically, but then they'll view the information on that form because you have to provide dates, times, what occurred. It's not just, I think this person's a dumb driver, and then their driving privileges get suspended. It has to be substantiated.
Yeah, could you call me back later? I'm on a call right now.
So that's what I have about that.
Tomorrow.
I've got a general question.
Yeah, sorry.
It's kind of a conversation I've had ongoing with my son. But if you're in a turn-only lane, whether it's left or right, turn only, are you required to use your turn signal?
I think so.
If I'm not mistaken, state law says activate your turn signal 100 feet prior to making a turn.
Yeah.
Something generic to that.
It doesn't say anything about whether it's a turn-only lane or not.
It's just a courtesy to other motorists. I understand your perspective. It's like, I can only go this direction, which traffic from behind you understands, but the traffic ahead of you, what do they know?
Because I always use my signals, whether I'm in a turn-only or not, I use it. But my son says, hey, Dad, you don't have to. You're in a turn-only lane. But I always use it. But it's from what you just described, if you're it's required then, huh?
It's on the approach you're supposed to make it. I mean, is it something I'm going to stop somebody for? No.
Yeah.
It's a courtesy, but courtesy has probably gone out the window as
I automatically use it. But if we're sitting at an intersection in a turn-only lane and the beepers and the blink going on and on and on, my son will say, hey, you know, You're in a turn only lane. Shut that thing off. Okay, enough on that real important issue.
That's really all I have, folks. So if there's something I didn't cover that you wanted to, and I can try to pull something out of thin air, or maybe I actually know it.
From my perspective, you've been very helpful. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Good job, Eric. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
We appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Attitude.
Be safe out there.